Hello and welcome to Behind the Warrior podcast. I am your host Maria Shabla, and today we are very excited to be present at the 10th annual EOD, IED, and Countermine Symposium hosted by Defense Strategies Institute. We are very excited to be speaking with Navy Commander Jake Keefe, who is currently the Deputy Branch Head, Expeditionary Combat. Thank you for being with us, Jake.
Thank you very much for having me.
So, Jake, when I just met you now, you had an interesting story about your bracelet.
Yep.
So, can you tell us about your bracelet?
Sure. Well, so, I walked up for the interview and there's a table of kind of EOD Warrior Foundation swag right here. And I was like, oh, a new bracelet. I've been wanting to get one of these because I've been wearing this one every day, I would say probably at least 8 years. As long as they've been making the gray ones, I've had this on, and it's basically flat and there's no writing on it anymore. There is proof that this was once at one point in EOD Warrior Foundation.
Unrecognizable.
Yeah. So I'm happy that I came here today because I get a replacement for my bracelet. I'm looking forward to putting it on.
Wow, that means a lot to us. And previous to that, you had another bracelet.
Yeah, well, before then, because there was kind of a transition before the Warrior Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
It was
EOD Wounded Warrior
EOD
Foundation.
Wounded, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so they had like a maroon one.
Yes.
And so I had that, and then when they transitioned to the Warrior Foundation and went to the gray and the orange ones, picked up my first gray one.
Wow.
So number 2 today.
Wow. We are so honored for you to wear that, and clearly that means a lot to you.
It does. Yeah. Yeah, and we were talking a little bit off air. It's one of those, just having friends, classmates, friends that have been hurt or killed in combat. If there are times that are hard, like physically hard or emotionally, just having something on me all the time that I can look to and say, I can get through this. They didn't have the opportunity to get through this. It's been helpful. It's been kind of a daily tribute to those folks.
Mm-hmm. So. Absolutely. Well, we remember, and thank you. That is quite an honor for us that you're wearing our bracelet.
Absolutely.
And that you get an upgrade today.
Yeah.
So thank you. So today you were here at the symposium speaking about modernizing U.S. Navy countermine capabilities to improve detection, classification, and localization.
Yep.
Can you give us some key takeaways from your presentation?
Yeah, thanks. So one of the things that I hit on there quite a bit was the Navy's commitment to transition our focus to the underwater space. So for 15, 20 years, we were focused on the counter-IED fight in Iraq and Afghanistan. Navy EOD was pretty invested in that fight with the rest of the Joint Force. But when we think about what the Joint Force needs in the future, what the National Defense Strategy tells us to do, Navy EOD, we focused our transition to get back into the water, right? So for a long time, our customer was the Joint Force, and now our customer is the fleet, and making sure that the fleet can maneuver. So we've done a lot of technological research and development and investments into searching and defeating for underwater mines, for instance. So that's one of the things we talked about in there today.
Yeah, and I remember you mentioned keeping the ports and the air, the runways.
Yeah. So when folks like me back in the day, our contribution to the Joint Force was clearing IEDs so that trucks could run routes and all the rest of that stuff. In the future, our contribution to the Joint Force is going to be, those small islands in the Pacific or other places out there in Europe, making sure that ports and airfields can remain open, right? So when we think about warfighting in the future, it's going to be about maneuver, logistics, and strike. And you're going to have those ports and airfields open and able to in order to win that fight.
Wow, that's awesome. And really, I mean, to me as a layperson, it makes sense that the Navy would do that, kind of make that pivot. So also, you have had a long career in the EOD career field. Can you give us some of the highlights of that?
Sure. So when I first got picked up in EOD, so I got commissioned out of the Naval Academy in 2005, and back then, if you got picked up for EOD, you actually had to go on ships first. And so there's a long history of EOD in the Navy of riding ships and commanding minesweepers. And so, again, I got commissioned in 2005. The war in Iraq was really starting to heat up. And so the Navy made the decision not to send EOD officers to ships anymore and just send them right into EOD.
Oh, wow.
So that happened the year after I commissioned. So we were the last folks that had to go on ships. So went down, all Navy EOD techs are divers too. So I went to dive school and then went into my tour on a ship, a minesweeper out of Texas, deployed on that. And then actually went to EOD school and have had a career in EOD. I've been at Moby Knits in Virginia Beach. I was the XO of the Moby Knit in Spain. Recently had command of our Moby Knit out in Guam. And then have done tours. I ran the EOD program at the Naval Academy, trying to recruit and train folks into EOD. And then I was the aide to the Vice Chief of Naval Operations, which was a very unique tour. A unique opportunity, and not a lot of EOD folks get the chance to go and be around the 4-stars. And then I did a tour at then Fort Bragg, now Fort Liberty at Joint Special Operations Command. So,
do you have a favorite
tour? Golly, I would say, like the first one that comes to my mind, I've made a career out of like being the second choice for a lot of these jobs, right? Like the job that I'm in right now, I was not supposed to go to.
Wow.
Somebody else was supposed to go, they didn't end up wanting to go, so I had to fill in. So I had this job at the Naval Academy. I did not want to go. I was in Iraq when I got an email saying, hey, we want you to go to the Naval Academy, and I was like, no, I want to stay operational, I want to take another team out. And they were like, no, you're going to this job at the Naval Academy. I went kicking and screaming. I met my wife there, and now we've got 3 awesome kids. And so that's one of those where like a huge impact on my life, right? Went there and started my family, but also having an opportunity to get a touch point with a lot of the young leaders who are still in our community now, that are taking increasing leadership positions now. That was great. I did probably, when you are an operational EOD tech, that's very impactful, especially if you're able to go into a combat zone. And so going to Iraq with a platoon of EOD techs was very formative for me as a person. Getting to serve with some of the folks that I went over there with, some are still very much lifelong friends of mine. That was a formative experience. And then going to command in EOD Moby Knit 5 in Guam, beautiful place to live with our family, and then just an amazing team of people out there. Yeah, it was.
Shout out to Guam.
Yeah, shout out to Guam. If you ever have an opportunity to go to Guam, take it. It's amazing. It was a perfect storm of the right place and the right time with the right team, and just a great group of people. Out there in Guam as the focus kind of shifted to the Pacific. So it was a great experience for sure.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, so you're relatively new to your current role. Can you tell us about what you're doing now?
Sure. Yeah, I've been here almost exactly a year, which, to be honest, like for a Navy officer, I'm probably closer to leaving my job. They rotate us like pretty quickly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
Yeah. But I've been here for a year, and so we do resourcing and requirement. And I know one of the things that we had talked about, for the purpose of this podcast and recording is Navy EOD. We've made a lot of investments in our people, right? In EOD, it's a very people-centric line of work, right? And so basically, what can we do to keep our people in the fight? And so Navy EOD stood up this program in 2020, I believe, called Strike. And it's essentially a human performance preservation of the force effort to keep our EOD techs and our divers ready for the fight. And so within 9.5, one of the things that we've tried to do is make sure that program is resourced appropriately, so that our EOD techs and divers, they've got the physical therapy, the strength and conditioning coaches, the mental health care that they need. Those kind of opportunities are available for our force, and we've seen the numbers. It's a good return on investment, right? Our folks are not LIMDU as much as they used to be. They're not light duty as much as they used to be. It's great to, coming out of command. Everybody talks about what a kind of a buzzkill it can be to come out of command, but I couldn't think of a better place to go than 9-5, where you're able to have all these touch points that'll have real impact on the force. So.
Yeah, I love the strike program, and I love that. I think that they just really recognize the value of the actual EOD tech, and
Sure.
so that's amazing. So who is able to go through that program? Is it active duty? Or?
Yeah, it's active duty. Anybody who's assigned within the Navy Expeditionary Combat Command, and specifically EOD Group 1 and Group 2. So active duty, EOD, divers, and then my command in Guam, we were 200 people, give or take. And I would say we only had about 90 EOD techs. So we actually had quite a few non-EOD personnel out there who were super critical to our ability to get the job done. They had access to strike as well. So it's not just EOD, not just divers, it's anybody who's attached to a command within EOD Group 1 or EOD Group 2.
So just trying to wrap my mind around this program. So it is a program that's like ongoing wherever you're stationed, or is it something that you travel to and go through and then go back to your station?
That's a great question. So there's basically, we have funded strike facilities and employees, basically strike support in Virginia Beach and San Diego. They've got pretty robust support because within Navy EOD, that's where the lion's share of our force is. And then we do have strike facilities and support in Guam and Rota, Spain as well, but in a more limited capacity.
That's very nice.
Yeah.
Nice. And
but we have a lot of personnel that are stationed in places outside of that, and unfortunately we don't have the support built in for them yet. So that's certainly an area where we would need to improve.
Well, the key word is yet, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then another question, I would imagine that they have nutrition in there as well. Yeah. Okay, that's so great.
Nutritionists are part of that program as well.
Yeah. I personally feel like those programs are so important and so effective. So that's really exciting. So kind of wanted to go more personal. You did share with me that you swam across the Potomac earlier.
That's funny, yeah.
So what do you like to do in your free time when you're not busy being EOD?
Yeah, I like to swim, which is great. I swam in college and had a lot of friends, go into EOD that I swam with, and it's been, a good kind of thing to keep you healthy mentally and physically. So I swim quite a bit. I've got 3 kids, 5, 3, and 1.
Woo!
So what do I do in my spare time? I go to sleep.
I know the answer.
Yeah, I go to sleep. They certainly keep me busy, but nothing too much. Love history and kind of foreign affairs and stuff like that.
So Jake, as a layperson,
Yep.
I've always been kind of curious about the difference, like how Navy EOD is different from the other 3 branches.
Yeah. So first of all, we're definitely the best. I would say second is we're the most humble. The big thing is that we deal with underwater ordnance. And so it starts from our very beginning in EOD school. All of the services, Navy included, we go to the core part of EOD school, and then Navy is kind of that one-off service that has to go to dive school, and then we stay at EOD school for about another 3 months and focus on underwater ordnance items. So that is the real difference. We do Navy EOD. We do some mobility skills that some of the other EOD techs don't. So after EOD school, all Navy EOD techs go to airborne school. So we all will jump out of planes. So everyone's a diver. Everyone is airborne qualified. Everybody learns how to get in and out of helicopters. So we've got some mobility skills that some of the other services don't. But to be honest, some of the other services have made pretty significant inroads in those as well. The Army's got a fantastic airborne EOD program. The Marine Corps is coming into the water as well. They're sending Marine EOD techs to dive school right now.
I actually heard there were some changes coming down the pipe.
Yeah, so it's good, but that's really it. Is every Navy EOD tech is a diver, and we focus on underwater ordnance. And when I talk about when I had that job at the Naval Academy and trying to pitch Navy EOD to young talented people, and you got to really. It was about finding folks who are willing and able to lead people, in stressful situations. And I would tell them like, hey, this is about taking a piece of explosives, putting on a rebreather, take that piece of explosives underwater to find another piece of explosives that's actively trying to find you and kill you, and then take that piece of explosives there and neutralize the larger one, right? And so it takes, that's what our force is prepared to do. I mean, that's what Navy EOD is prepared to do. We put a lot of investments in not having people do that. We've made a lot of investments in having, unmanned underwater vehicles and remote operating vehicles go do that. But at the end of the day, if that mission needs to happen, every Navy EOD tech wearing a crab needs to be prepared to execute that mission.
Wow. Well, thank you for explaining that to me. And then the other thing is, like, I know EOD is one of the most dangerous careers in the military in itself, but then going underwater and doing that job, and then the thought that popped in my mind is, like, what about animals? Like, you also have, like, it's dark, you have, like, sea creatures. How do you guys kind of mitigate that risk?
Yeah, that's funny. It's funny because as the parent of a 5, 3, and 1-year-old, I think about, like, all of the animal books and shows that my kids watch. But I mean, to be honest, as with any high-risk thing that we do, we put safety mitigations in place, right? And so, if you're diving in a place where there's a heavy current, you won't dive there, or you wait till the current to die down. If you're diving in a place where there's a high risk of marine, life activity, you may not dive there, right? Like, for instance, the Australian clearance divers, there are parts of the year and parts of Australia where they do not dive because of great whites.
Oh, wow.
There are parts of the year and parts of Australia where they don't dive because of crocodiles.
Interesting.
So, certainly have done, I recently did a dive brief on a ship, and the ship's master was like, we're like, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, and we did all these tag outs to make sure it's safe to dive here, and he's like, there's about a 12-foot tiger shark that hangs out at the bottom of the ship. Just make sure that you don't run into that.
Don't bother him.
Yeah, and so certainly, you talk about that on the dive brief about what you're going to do if you see something like that. But
wow. Well, thank you so much, Jake, for taking the time to talk with us today, and we wish you the best
Thank you very much.
with your career. Thank you.